if we're going to understand the greater complexity of the experienced world, of the experienced imagination, which is in a way a fallen imagination, you know what I mean by fallen. It's fallen in the same sense that Adam and Eve, once they eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, become fallen. And they are forced to leave the Garden of Eden and go out, and as Milton says, with wandering steps and slow, they took their solitary way east of Eden, right, as they go out, and of course have to encounter the complexities. The world was all before them, says Milton. Well, once we leave, as it were, the sort of peaceful joy of our own innocence, then the world, alas, but excitingly too, is all before us. And if we're going to understand the greater complexities of the world experience, then will the piper be the proper person to show us those? Remember, he's the one who sings the songs of innocence, right? The piper. No, we need somebody else. So instead of the piper, who's going to be singing these songs? The piper is for innocence. What do we got here? Look at the introduction to the Songs of Experience. Hear the voice of the bard. Was the piper a bard? He's a piper. He was a pastoral symbol of the singer of pure, innocent joy. But now we're no longer in Kansas. We are no longer in childhood. Well, if we are, it's seen through the eye of the experience rather than imagination. And that means it's more complex. And what do we need to interpret that sphere of life, that state of human consciousness? A more complex sort of poet, a larger poet, a kind of visionary poet. And so he becomes the bard. And what does the bard do? Hear the voice of the bard who present, past, and future sees. Why is that important, that the bard be able to see the past, the present, and the future? Yeah. When you're innocent, do you worry about the past? You worry about the future? But once you fall into the world of experience, what do? You start saying things like the Book of Common Prayer, don't you? You start saying things, oh Lord, forgive me for all those things I have done which I ought not to have done, and all those things which I have left undone which I ought to have done. I mean, in other words, it takes a worried man to sing a worried song, and boy, when you're experienced, you're properly worried, aren't you? You're worried about the past, you're worried about the future, we're worried about now. It's just a lot of worries. And so our consciousness expands, in a sense, and narrows perhaps in other ways, in the world of experience. Shelley, one of the greatest of the later Romantic poets, will say at one point in one of his poems, we look before and after, and pine for what is not, and our sincerest laughter is with some sadness fraught. You see what he's saying? We look before and after. We pine for what is not. I thought I'd be happy when I got married. I thought I'd be happy when I got divorced. I thought I'd be happy when I went to school. I'll sure be happy when I get out of school. It doesn't matter what we say will make us happy. The truth is that we are haunted by the past, fearful of the future. That's the reason one of the things that's saddest to me is to see kids 17, 18 years old, and instead of learning what it is to be human, instead of exploring their own minds and their own hearts and all the rest of it, the poor little darlings are encouraged to start working on their IRAs, and because you don't want to end up in old folks. I mean, this is sad. I'd like to know what Blake would have to say about the way we do things here. If you think about it, nobody's ever supposed to be happy in our culture. And in fact, if the Johnnies who run things out of their way, we can look forward to working until we drop in the future. Isn't that nice? I guarantee you, to me, it seems late enough to have to wait to 65 to retire. But if they have their way in the future, it might be 70. Or why not just make it around 100 and be done with it, right? Just keep us absolutely like the galley slave our whole miserable lives from beginning to end. Work, 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 Oh, Lord, sure. And all for what? So that everybody can have electric toothbrushes, 3 cars, and a house in the suburbs. Is the candle worth the race? I mean, is the reward worth the torment? Well, maybe we ought to ask that question every now and then. Blake asks that question all the time. And that's one thing that makes him a sort of revolutionary poet. He's always sort of getting under the skin of our ordinary, commonplace way of looking at things and making us look at things in deeper ways. The bard can do that. He sees present, past, and future. What else is he in touch with? whose ears have heard the holy word that walked among the ancient trees. The bard not only knows present, past, and future, which means he knows all time, but he is also in touch with what? With God. The ancient word, logos. In the beginning was the Word of God. He is in touch with that. He is, in other words, Blake felt, and he genuinely believed this. There's no doubt in my mind that he did, and I think there's a degree to which is true. He saw himself as a prophet. He saw himself as a prophet in the way that Isaiah or Ezekiel was a prophet. And his later works are usually called the prophetic books. That is, the book of Bethel, the book of Horizon, the Zola, Jerusalem, books like that. And he meant it in a very serious way. He thought that people with a sufficiently developed imaginative power that was a divine power as far as he was concerned, and that was a God within them speaking. And to speak it correctly, get it right, is exactly what he thought Ezekiel and Isaiah and Jeremiah and all the rest of them had done, and what he intended to do. So, whose ears have heard the holy word that walked among the ancient trees. Now, what is this voice of the complex, visionary bard asking the human being to do? Calling the lapsed soul. What's a lapsed soul?
One that's fallen dormant.
Yep, or fallen. It's what I think my Southern Baptist friends would call backslid. When you, or as Dizzy Dean would have said, backslid. But the idea is that when you fall away from what you could be, or what you should be, that's obviously a condition of being lapsed, isn't it? The lapsed soul. There's an expression the Catholic Church uses, a lapsed Catholic. You know what a lapsed Catholic is? Actually, that's somebody who, when a Catholic becomes an atheist, he says, there is no God, and Mary is his mother. It's sort of confused there. That's the way a lot of us are. Think about it. It's a joke, too. Not at the expense of Catholics either, but the expense of all of us, because that's what we do. We don't always believe anything very firmly, but we're anxious about the fact that we don't believe anything. So mostly, instead of being men and women of faith, we end up being men and women of Prozac. Because we can't quite deal with all these things. What he's getting at here is that the bard, this sort of divine voice, is calling to the lapsed soul, the soul that no longer is in spiritual health, and asking that, what does he say to that lapsed soul? And weeping in the evening dew. Notice, the minute you get to the world of experience, we are in the evening. Notice, everything counts. We're in the evening. When we get to Tiger, Tiger, burning bright, where does it burn bright? In the forests of the night. And when you go to London in that poem, but most through midnight streets I hear, that night. In the Songs of Innocence, it was always beautiful pastoral daylight, wasn't it? In the Songs of Experience, it's something very different. Calling the lapsed soul and weeping in the evening dew, weeping, that might control the starry pole and fallen light renew. In other words, the bard is calling upon the lapsed soul. Come back. Do you remember the Old Testament prophet who was always saying that to Jerusalem? He says, return, return, O Jerusalem. Jeremiah, Lamentations. If you will look for the word return in the Lamentations of Jeremiah, you will find it 1,000 times. Returnite, says in the Vulgate. Come back, come back, come back. It's exactly what Blake is suggesting here. When we fall in from innocence to experience, we have fallen into a condition of disharmony, of darkness, of frustration, a sense of evil, worry, concern. I mean, all you have to do is look at the poem Tiger, and the man who's speaking that poem is a worried man. I mean, he's worried about everything. He's scared of nature, he's scared of God, he's scared of himself, he's scared of everything. What is the voice of the bard trying to get us to do? Calling the lapsed soul that might control the starry pole and fallen light renew. Blake always believed that if the human imagination were healthy and operating in its full, mighty capacity, that it would transform the world. That it would change everything. That it could do what? Could control the starry pole. And what would it return? Not just to itself, but to nature and to everything. Fallen light would be what? Renewed. You can do it. You can change your life. You can change the life of the world. You can change everything. Well, you've always believed what a friend of mine, I have a very good friend who's a German, scholar of German romance. His name's Eric Keller, very brilliant fellow. And I remember him, he used to say, be careful of the way you conceive of the world, because that's the way it is. Now think about what he's saying. It's very Blakey. If you have a certain view of what the world is, I promise you, that's the way it is. And that's the way you will live it. And that's the way you will deal with it. It's not just a matter of opinion. It's a matter that you have shaped your world. You have given it form and content and values and dynamics, and you think you understand it, and you live according to that. That's the way the world is, the way you conceive of it. Blake here calls upon the fallen soul to rise to a higher level of conception. Blake is always talking about this. He will say at one point in another poem, oh, that the doors of perception should be cleansed, should be opened. He says, remember I quoted this before, he said, God save me from Newton's vision, single vision, and Newton's sleep. And what the bard is trying to do here, in essence, the simple way to put it is, we have fallen into experience. What is the bard telling us? There is a higher level that we can attain if only we would. What is it called? We know it by now, surely. Organized innocence. But are we going to get there in this poem, in this group poem? No, we're not. Why not? Well, because that's not what he set out to do. He said innocence and experience. In point of fact, he will deal with organized innocence in his later work, but we won't really get there. If you have read by some chance, as some of you might have, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, there's one that to some degree deals with this sort of higher realm. The Book of Thel, to some degree, implies that, but since it's not a seminar on Blake, I'll just have to let that go. Take me on faith, though, there is that possibility out there. And the bard is trying to speak to the fallen soul. But how's the fallen soul doing? O earth, return, arise from out the dewy grass. Night is worn, and the morn rises from the slumberous mass. I told you he was a revolutionary poet. What is he trying to get people to do? Wake up. He's a poetic rooster. That is to say, he's a cock who sings and says, it's the morning, wake up. Because he sees the modern world that he lived in, as basically a world created by the fallen imagination of the 18th century, of the Age of Reason and so forth. And if he could only get them to wake up, then everything could be changed. Can you see why this is consistent with the... it's consistent that this is written almost exactly the same time as the French Revolution. What's the French Revolution trying to do? Wake people up. Thomas Carlyle, I don't think he was fair at the 18th century, but Thomas Carlyle, a great Victorian thinker, said once that the 18th century was such a miserable, debased age that it never did but one manly thing in its whole life, and that was to blow its brains out in the French Revolution. That's not fair. That is really not fair. But it makes a point. That is to say, from Carlyle's point of view, and he is the great literary historian of the French Revolution, he saw the French Revolution as a revolutionary sort of murdering of the rationalist 18th century society in the interest of what? A finer, bigger, larger, more humane, greater reality. Blake's arguing for that too. He says, night is worn and the morn rises from the slumberous mass. Turn away no more. Why wilt thou turn away? The starry floor, the watery shore is given thee till the break of day. In other words, the limitations on our horizon. And what are those? The starry floor, the watery shore. You know, I can't do that. There's a line out there that says I can't do that. And has anyone read Blake enough to know what he called the God of experience, the God who sort of rules over our limited imagination and tries to get us to stay limited? He called him Urizen. Yes, Urizen. This is his name for him. Now, there are two words that I think he meant to suggest by a made-up word, Urizen. One is, pronounce the second syllable not with a long I, and he never said how we were supposed to pronounce it. Well, not with a long I, but with a long E, which is perfect, which you could easily do. And what do you got? your reason. That is what keeps you limited, what keeps you from fourfold vision, what keeps you from higher, the limitations of your own reason. Another way that your horizon, which is the generally accepted pronunciation, is obviously very close, and Blake himself drew attention to this, to the word what? Horizon. What is a horizon? It's a limitation. Oh, it can't go up there. See that line up there? That's where the deep water is. Can't go up there. See that up there? That's the stuff. Can't go beyond that. Little boxes, little limitations, little horizons. They're everywhere. But how long do they last? Only as long as the night of our own limitations lasts. If we would wake up, what does the eagle say? We often live our lives in chains. When all we have, what we didn't realize the whole time was, guess what? We had the key. If we'd only use it. Blake says very much the same thing. The starry floor, the watery shore is given thee only till when? Till the break of day. That is, what do we need to be able to understand that the world is in fact not a bunch of physical horizons, but a world of infinite possibility and divine and spiritual reality? Because that's exactly what Blake said that when the fallen world of the experience and reason is finally done away with, then the world will appear as it is. And what does that mean? For everything that lives is holy. See, that's really what it is. In other words, the world will seem divine rather than merely blah. It will seem infinite rather than what? Limited. And so when you go filling in your own blanks, that's basically what he's getting at. But unfortunately, that's not where we are, is it? Because Earth turns away. We are still, this is the potential of organized innocence. But you notice at the end of the poem, there's no answer from the Earth. The Earth is still turning away, still resistant to the idea. Now, once we enter this fallen world, what do we get? Instead of harmony, which we saw all the way through the Songs of Innocence, we get, I'm afraid, conflict and divergent points of view that are at war with one another.